And let's now speak to DA spokesperson for Public Service and Administration, Dr. Leon Schreiber. Dr. Schreiber, good morning and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good morning, Aldrin. Good morning to the viewers.
Well, let's start off with issues relating to the manifesto, and the anticipation, of course, is around what the DA will say, the type of South African government that it wants to create under its leadership at a national level. What does that look like? Sure, we will have the leader of the party giving the address a bit later on, but what insights can you share with us at this moment?
Yes, of course. I'm not going to give anything away at this stage, and I would encourage everyone to tune in a bit later for that speech by DA leader John Steenhuisen. But I think what we can say at this stage is that this manifesto is really focused on the most fundamental problems that if we don't fix those problems, South Africa will not survive. We know in 1994 that we were all very hopeful and optimistic about what the future held. But over time, and especially in the last 15 years under the Zuma and the Ramaphosa administrations, things have become so bad and so dire that right now we are fighting for our survival. And if you are fighting for your survival, you have to prioritize those things that will actually make you survive, those fundamental things that affect the lives of all South Africans, whether it's load shedding, crime, unemployment, and these will really be the focus areas for the DA's manifesto. We believe that there are many great things that South Africa can still achieve in the future, but without reliable electricity, without water in our taps, without economic opportunities, none of those other things are possible, and that's why we're calling this a rescue mission for South Africa.
Yeah. The DA has always been clear around devolution of power, specifically when it comes to even, for instance, with the police, and we were speaking to MEC Regan Allen just a bit earlier on as well. But does that devolution move into other departments as well, or is the focus solely going to be on looking at the police, looking at, for instance, we know right now that you have health as well as education that is a provincial competency. But are there other departments that you're looking at and saying that perhaps maybe this department as well, we should have a provincial competency?
Yes, that's right. And you'll be familiar with the Provincial Powers Bill that's already been introduced in the Western Cape, where the focus is on policing, as you mentioned, but also on public transport and on electricity and on the harbours, as those are key cogs in any functioning government. So we know that the ANC has failed on all of those metrics, policing, electricity provision, public transport, and managing our ports and harbours. And the DA's position is very clear that where the national government fails to execute a particular function, that should be devolved to capable local and provincial governments where those exist. I think it's very important to emphasize, of course, Aldrin, that we are working very hard to also take government in additional provinces. With our partners in the multi-party charter, we believe that is well within reach in places like Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and a few others. And certainly, once we are able to get those provinces on track again, then where the national government fails to deliver services, they would need to be devolved then. Because at the end of the day, the commitment to devolution is not an abstract thing. We can't sit by and watch we're in places where we may be in municipal and provincial governments and watch as some of these critical functions for decades are just going backwards and in many cases collapsing from the national government. We have a responsibility to step in, and we believe that we have identified through the Powers Bill the legal mechanism we can use to actually say to the national government, if you don't fix these things, then you must devolve them, because at the end of the day, it's about the people receiving those services.
Yeah. And just to be clear as well, is that as the manifesto goes on and as the launch is being done today, that the DA is still clear that it's not calling for an independent Western Cape, that there should be a cessation of the province, that the province should become an independent province, almost like we have a federal state.
No, there's absolutely no commitment to secession from the Democratic Alliance. And in fact, Aldrin, I can share with you some relatively recent news that there is a party who had applied that wants to secede from South Africa. They had applied to join the multi-party charter earlier this week, and the application was unanimously rejected by all members of the multi-party charter, precisely because what we are fighting for alongside our partners is a South Africa that works for all. We are seeking to unite people, and that is very much also the purpose of the Charter. And so there is simply no space for people who want to divide us and essentially go against the project that we are seeking. So that is quite an important development on this front. All of the members of the Charter agreed that this is not the direction we should be going.
Do you mind sharing with us which political party that is?
There's a party in the Western Cape called the Referendum Party who wants to secede, and that application was rejected by the multi-party charter.
Okay. Also, another difference to this election manifesto launch is that you won't have Gwen and Gwen, who was quite critical in formulating the policies for the Democratic Alliance and also leading into your first policy conference. Has it been difficult at all not having her there?
Look, Gwen is a very talented person, and it was a decision on her side to pursue other opportunities, and I believe that she's doing very well where she currently is. But we are very lucky in the DA to have a really deep pool of talented people, including talented young people like Mr. Matt Cuthbert, who has really stepped up to take on the policy role in the DA, and he has done really Herculean work to get us to this point with a manifesto, I think, Aldrin, that you will see later today is the most digestible, the most clear, the most understandable that you've ever seen from the DA and probably from any South African political party. And it's not an easy task in a party with thousands of public representatives and even more members and millions of supporters to manage such a process. I believe it took over 10 months of policy work, not only with the new policies you mentioned that we have adopted since 2019, but also through party structures to come to a point where we have what we believe is a very clear and compelling offer on the fundamentals that South Africa needs to fix if we want to secure our future.
Yeah. Okay, let's quickly move to the decision by the Constitutional Court rejecting that application to appeal by the ANC, the decision by the High Court that it must hand over the records of its deployment committee meetings. This is now the minutes of those meetings, including the documents that you were speaking about some time ago, including the CVs that they were focusing on to determine who should be deployed. Has the ANC responded to the DA as yet?
No, they do have until Monday to comply with this particular court order, so we will, of course, respect that as well. But what I can say is that there will be an important announcement in Mr. Steenhuisen's address today about this particular issue. And really it is something that we are going to pursue all the way to the end. I know there's been a lot of speculation in some quarters about whether the ANC will comply with this particular order. And I have been really struck by that because I think it's a comment on the governing party, the outgoing governing party, that many people believe it will simply seek to ignore this order from the highest court in the land. We are very clear and very firm that we will not allow that to happen because we believe it will trigger a constitutional crisis if we end up in that situation. So I would encourage viewers to follow Mr. Steenhuisen's address today to see the way forward on this matter. Okay.
So since that court judgment, no word or meeting as yet that has been held between the DA as well as the ANC. They haven't communicated anything to you as yet?
No, we don't have any meetings with them. We don't have any indication that we are going to receive these documents. And of course, now time is running out. So we are preparing for a scenario in which we may have to take further action. But at the same time, I do want to emphasize, Aldrin, they do have until Monday, and we do respect that fact too. Perhaps they are at this very moment scrambling to get all of these things together. And if that's the case, then we would certainly welcome them handing them over to us on Monday.
What if they say that the documents were destroyed in a fire, destroyed in a water leak?
Well, your question there again is part of this narrative that I've observed where people are so skeptical of whether the party that governs this country is going to comply with an order from the highest court in South Africa. So, I can't speculate on whether they're going to do that. But I really would be embarrassed if I was the ANC that most South Africans think that they are so desperate to hide these secrets and these records that they would actually undermine the rule of law in this way. Of course, as I say, if there are shenanigans, we will take firm action. But the reality is, Aldrin, that there are minutes, a very limited set of minutes, that were submitted to the Zondo Commission. And so we know these things exist. And also, as you mentioned, we asked for a very broad range of things, including emails and WhatsApps that are, of course, digital material and that cannot be destroyed from the cloud through a fire or a leak or some other lame excuse.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Dr. Leon Schreiber there, speaking to us ahead of the Democratic Alliance's election manifesto launch. And just quickly on the deployment committee meeting minutes, you remember that during the State Capture Commission of Inquiry,